in my life, if I hear one more person tell me, I don't have anything to hide. If you want to look under my stuff, I don't care. I have nothing to hide. I'm going to lose my shit. I absolutely rail against the attitude that people tell me when I start giving a speech on your constitutional rights being violated when the government illegally spies on you, and your attitude is, well, I don't care if they spy on me. I've got nothing to hide. I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry for you because, again, if you out there in America are living such boring lives that you don't care who looks into your private life, then you need a better private life. That's my opinion. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get into documents. The reason why I'm bringing it up early as we do documents number 201 to 250 on the Moscow Police Department deep dive videos is I want to point out that a lot of this, in my opinion, is coming down to the government did some illegal things to get to Brian Kohberger, right? So we presumed, or some of us presumed in the early stages, that it was real detective work and that whole knife sheath DNA that led to the tip of Brian Kohberger. I'm not so convinced that's the case. Not only did they do, I think, illegal things, not just unscrupulous things like maybe using a database they shouldn't have done, but may have illegally done so. Not just because it was a violation of the rules, but because of doing things like, for example, and falsely impersonating somebody to submit, for example, a DNA profile saying, hey, I'm Brian Kohberger, when maybe they are not Brian Kohberger, and it's illegal to falsify their identity. Things like that. And other things like, for example, spying on people's electronic communications that are supposed to be private without a warrant, doing it anyways because you're always spying on all Americans, and then using that data to say, okay, now we know who it is, let's build the case towards them. If they're violating your constitutional rights by looking at your private data without a warrant, that is a scary thing. But again, I know a lot of you will retort with, I have nothing to hide, so look away. Again, sorry you guys don't have a more interesting life, but that's a whole other thing. I think, for example, let me give you one example. If let's say I was a younger man, and I wanted to share a photo with my wife, or my wife wanted to share a photo with me that I don't intend to share with my neighbor or my coworkers, if you get my drift. The government shouldn't just get to snoop through my phone and look at pictures of my wife or whatever that I didn't intend for anybody but her and I to share. Now, I realize a lot of people don't do stuff like that. And again, sorry, you guys don't have a more interesting life. But the point being is that I didn't have that communication for the whole entire federal government to look through and share those photos, right? So that's just one example of something that a person could be doing that is completely legal, but it's disgusting if they're looking through your private life, reading your private conversations. Maybe you had an inappropriate conversation with your wife or spouse. Maybe, as has happened before, I know I'm on a tangent, when soldiers were overseas and they were having sexting with their wives back in the United States, the government would spy on those conversations and eavesdrop on a private moment between a husband and wife because, well, they're overseas. It could be a terrorist communication. We have every right to monitor that conversation. And then people are sharing around the office photos of the guy's wife or whatever. If that's okay with you, that that's the world you want to live in because I got fucking nothing to hide. Again, I'm sorry that your life is so simple. I, however, am done with this rant. Let's get on to documents 201 to 250. And I'm going to pull it up on screen and get going right away. I think we're going to be able to do this in 2 videos, I think. Maybe 3. Again, I try to keep my videos, and I try to stay conscious of keeping my videos to about 1 hour. And these are in order of the documents that are coming out from 201 to 250. And so therefore, it's not like a story where the best part of the story is coming at the end, the climax is coming at the end, or whatever. We may have the juiciest part be like midway through, and then the rest of it will be kind of like, oh, never mind. But it's just my initial first thoughts on these documents. Fortunately for me, some of you have told me that you really enjoy the way I analyze documents, and you don't mind when I go on those riffs like, hey, if I want to send a nude photo, or my wife wants to send a nude photo, that you guys should stay out of that phone. Sometimes you like those side tangents. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, you creepy old bastard. I don't want to hear about your kinks. I get it. The point being is that there are legitimate reasons. By the way, I'm going to side tangent on VPNs again in this thing, because again, the same whole kind of thing. Some of you have a very boring life. Some of you have a more interesting life, but we're going to talk about VPNs again because it comes up in this document series. Now, here's Lawrence Mowery from wow. You're like, fuck, did I just listen to him talk about his freaking private life for forever? Yes, you did. 5/24/2023, TikTok account for Kohberger on a warrant. In searching for the geolocation for the IP address, I get to go to the thing right now with the VPNs. I found it returned to NordVPN out of Seattle, Washington. NordVPN has been located and installed on the app on Koberger's phone. No information was provided by TikTok regarding the messages sent or received, followers or following accounts, or user-created content. Now, let's stop for a moment on the VPN issue, because it's one of those, again, people with this attitude of, why would you have a VPN? Only criminals use VPNs. And yes, this is going to be a small side tangent, maybe not all that small because I can't help myself. I'm a huge proponent of civil liberties and the right to privacy. Other countries, by the way, have laws that are called the right to privacy, where after a certain amount of time, your internet data is supposed to be scrubbed and not available. Because, by the way, the 20-year-old me did shit that the 30-year-old me wouldn't do. And the 30-year-old me might have done shit that the 40-year-old me wouldn't do. And so we should have a right in our lives to make mistakes in the past and to have our history erased. But what we've got is a situation where we are living in a mass surveillance state, where everything you do is recorded for forever. And that moment of weakness you had when you were 18 might surface when you're 50, and you, oh my God, like, I can't believe that's still out there on the internet. But that's the world that we live in today. But we should have a right to privacy, and we shouldn't have to explain ourselves when we were a different person back in the day. Okay, you're getting a whole lot of idea about my shit. Let's talk about the VPN for a second. So, Brian Koberger used a VPN and disguised his location as being in Seattle. Why would he do that unless he's a criminal? Now, I'm going to point out to you again, scenarios that you have never comprehended because you guys all live very boring lives. If, for example, you're at work and you're not supposed to, and by the way, regardless of what this is going to sound like, the example I'm going to give you is not something I do. But if you work for a company, for example, that doesn't want you on company time looking at certain, let's say, unsavory websites that your company doesn't allow you to go do, even on your personal break or whatever. Let's say you wanted to take a moment to look at an unsavory website, whatever the case may be. It might be sports gambling. I want to check my sports gambling debt. I want to check on my sports team to see how they're doing. Nope, we don't approve our computers for private use. You can, for example, turn on a VPN and it'll tunnel your information. So it doesn't, so your company who's monitoring the network will only see that you turned on a VPN, but they won't see that you went out to gambling.com. Much more interesting story than what I would do. But the point being is that it'll hide what website that you went to, so they can't see exactly. All they see is, oh, well, the person had a VPN on and I can't see what they're doing. Oh shit, I can't see what they're doing. This is unacceptable. I must see what you're doing at all times. So a VPN hides your identity and also your IP address, and also several different things. It encrypts basically your traffic in a tunnel. And so, and I know that may not make sense if you're not into IT just a little bit, but the point being is that people use them for legitimate reasons all the time. A perfect example, somebody left, I'm on a huge tangent, somebody left a comment. If you are in a medical profession and you go to somebody's house with your laptop, you may be required to turn on a VPN and tunnel the information so that their private HIPAA information isn't just passed over their home security system. If they connect to your Wi-Fi, for example, if I'm at home and the guy's coming over doing an intake at my house for medical records and he touches my Wi-Fi and he's just typing notes right out in the open on the internet and sending it back to his corporate office or whatever, and it's not encrypted somehow, I could be stealing all that information from his company. So he'll VPN. He'll VPN so that he hides the tunnel from me so that I can't see. All I can see is that he's tunneling back to his office and sending HIPAA-related information I can't see. Do you understand what I'm saying? There are completely 100% legitimate reasons to use a VPN. Brian Koberger using a VPN, holy shit, this is a way longer tangent than I wanted to be, does not suggest criminal activity at all. But it does show you that he was trying to hide what he was doing. But that is not criminal behavior. But anyways, that rant is over. Maybe I should shorten that. I'm trying to educate people on multiple things, including my personal pet peeve, which is invasion of privacy. Lawrence Mallory from June 6, 2023, and this is about a previous warrant who Snapchat requested for the date range of August 1st through November 20th. Now, this is what I want to bring out more and more. I remember reading Howard Bloom's When the Night Comes Falling, and it talks about a trip that Brian Koberger and his father took out to Pullman, Washington when he was going to school and moving into school and bringing his belongings. And it seemed like that happened in August, very, very early August. Here as well, when the police are looking into all of his initial stuff was August 1st through November 20th, meaning just a little past the murders. So the murders happened November 13th. So they wanted to capture what happened from the time he got into town and it's constantly or regularly referred to as August 1st through the murders. Now, what struck me, and I see it a lot in this document, is a different date now, which is June 23rd. And if you look, it says here, based on information obtained from Washington State University, Bryan Kohberger moved to Pullman on or about June 23rd. Okay, so which one is it? Did he come out in August or June 23rd? That's a month and a half or 2 months earlier than we thought. I thought he came out in August. I thought we read a book saying that the first time he came out with all his belongings was in August. But now Washington State University says that he was living there since June 23rd. So that would put him all through July, at the end of June, all through July, living in the Pullman area before that trip out with his dad in August, which I thought was in August. Now, there's a way to explain a lot of this real quick, and I want to point this out, because I'm going to point this out several times, how all of a sudden this date of June 23rd for me is popping out. Maybe you guys all knew this already, but it is very possible Bryan Kohberger came out on a scouting mission on a plane prior to August when he came with his dad and all his belongings. He could have looked for a place ahead of time in June. He could have secured a place in June for the coming semester, and then flew back perhaps to Pennsylvania and came out with his dad on the long drive with all his shit instead of shipping it across the country, right? So that's a very plausible scenario. Kohberger came out early, got a place to stay, rented a place. According to WSU's records, that's when he started living, because that's when he has a residence in Pullman. And then he didn't actually come out with his father and all his shit until August sometime. That's a plausible scenario that answers those two answers. I don't know if that's how it happened, but I'm just letting you know that that's how I worked that out. That it's very possible Bryan Kohberger. And again, there was a run tracked in the area in Washington State prior to August. Runs, meaning that actually literally Kohberger had gone for a run or a jog. So did he come out for a while, find a place to stay, rent a place to stay, do a couple of jogs, and then went back to Pennsylvania and came out with his dad with the rest of his shit later on? I think that's probably likely the scenario. All right. Brett Payne from 6/8/2023. Amazon returns items in Kohberger's vehicle. Now, on Thursday, June 8th, 2023, so this is well into the year after the murders, I accessed Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra in order to photograph items in the trunk compartment. So they still have his vehicle in impound in the police lot, it looks like, and they're now 6 months more later, actually like 8 months later, going through and accessing and photographing things in his trunk. I was able to identify 3 items from the trunk compartment, which I could positively identify as the same items ordered from Amazon per the return obtained via subpoena in this case. So they went for looking for things that Bryan Kohberger has bought on Amazon. What are they looking for? K-bar knife purchase is what they're looking for, I think. Maybe they were looking for something else. Pretty sure they were looking for the K-bar knife purchase. Hey, did he ever buy a K-bar knife? They're looking for Amazon receipts. During that Amazon receipts, they saw several things that he bought, and those items appear to be in his trunk. That's the bottom line of this. They're basically saying, oh, we can see that we've got the right account. That's the argument. At the end of the day, what they're trying to argue is, look, this argument later on that some will say is, well, you can't prove that Bryan Kohberger's, that it was his account. It was just a family account. See, this was one of the arguments that came up on the defensive side when they said Bryan Kohberger bought a K-bar knife and then later was looking for a replacement for the K-bar knife. The argument Ann Taylor started to present was that was a family account. It doesn't belong to Bryan Kohberger exclusively. It's a family account. His entire family has access. How do you know it was Bryan Kohberger looking for the purchase of the knife and a replacement knife and not somebody else in the family? That was some of the early narrative we heard. So what they're doing is they're trying to show, look, these are items in Bryan Kohberger's car, bought with the same account that bought the K-bar knife. That's where they're going with this. So therefore, it's likely Bryan Kohberger uses this account to buy things because it's in his car. So the knife is probably his as well. That's kind of the argument I think they're trying to go down at this point. And then the first item they talk about was a bottle of supplements named Amidine Vitamin D3 K2 Vegan. We heard a lot of talk. Bryan Kohberger's a vegan. We've heard a lot of bullshit. Mad Greek's a vegan restaurant. That's why he went there. He would have picked Mad Greek. That's how he met Maddie. That's why he became obsessed with Maddie. That's why he stalked her and killed her. All that shit is untrue. Bryan Kohberger there is no evidence whatsoever Bryan Kohberger was ever at the Mad Greek. There's not even evidence that Bryan Kohberger was some kind of strict vegan. There is evidence that Mad Greek isn't a vegan restaurant. They have items on their menu that are vegan, and there's no evidence that has been stated multiple times by the prosecution that Brian Koberger was not stalking any of the girls. There's no evidence of stalking whatsoever. And this whole narrative that keeps freaking driving me nuts, that Koberger was obsessed with Maddie, has never been proven. It's a theory. That's all it is. But that theory is sticking in the craw of America. Oh, yeah, he was obsessed with Maddie because he saw her at the Mad Greek restaurant. He's a vegan, and that's a vegan restaurant. All of these things are fucking not really true. But anyways, side tangent. The bottle was in the trunk compartment and contained in a small plastic bag. The bottle's label read Emidine Vegan D3 plus K2 dietary supplements. The second item I positively identified, and this is again items in Koberger's trunk, was labeled as lead brand Scissor Jack 1.5 ton on the Amazon return. He found in that trunk, so that was one of the labels they found on Amazon from Koberger's account, was that there was a leader brand Scissor Jack 1.5 ton jack for your car, like for changing a tire. And so he finds in the trunk of Koberger's car a 1.5 ton Scissor Jack in the trunk compartment. But it did not have any brand markings. Probably he's suggesting it's the same 1.5, whatever. I searched the same name on Amazon and found the same name. I located in the trunk compartment. It should be noted the jack came with ratchet handle as well. Now, it says that this item was booked previously. Now, this is what kind of bothers me a little bit. It should be noted that the jack came with a ratchet handle as well. Why are they pointing that out? There was indications that Kaylee Gonzalez may have had her face bashed in. She may have been punched in the face. She may have been hit in the face. She may have been hit with another object. There was also indications at the press conference that more than one weapon was used in the attack. One of the reporters in that press conference asked, "Can you tell us what the second weapon was?" To which they replied, "We've maintained from the beginning that the killer used a sharp bladed knife. That's all we're going to say about that." But there has been indications and rumors all over the place that Kaylee or some other victim was hit in the face with an object. Some say a flashlight, some say a beanbag, some say whatever the case was, some say it was a fist. Whatever the case, there was indication that Kaylee had been hit in the face. Steve Gonzalez told us he punched my daughter in the face as if that was somehow made him the worst animal ever. Not the fact that he slashed her up, apparently, but that son of a bitch hit her in the face. Like, he did a lot worse than hit her in the face, people. But the point being is this why in this document they're saying it should be noted that the jack came with a ratchet handle. So, are they suggesting they took the ratchet handle and beat somebody in the face? It's a question. The third item I located was labeled Cartman Warning Triangle Dot or DOT, Department of Transportation, for those who don't know what the DOT is. If you're not from America, you're not familiar with the DOT. Is DOT an international thing or just an American thing? Anyways, Cartman Warning Triangle DOT, that's Department of Transportation, approved on the Amazon return. I located a red rectangular plastic box with the warning triangles inside. On the side box was a sticker which read Cartman on the. So he's just pointing out the items that Brian Koberger, I can see in his purchase history on Amazon, are the same items in his trunk, so that we can beat home that the K-bar knife that was on that same account was probably also Koberger's. It's detective work, and I get it, but and it's worth talking about. So we did. All right. Brett Payne, 4/13/2023. On Tuesday, June 13th, Detective Darren Gilbertson from ISP provided me, it's the Idaho State Police, provided me with 3 packages that he obtained by ordering the items on Amazon. So this is where it gets a little like I start to get a little bit nervous about detectives when they do this shit. So Detective Gilbertson stated he purchased the items in the same fashion used by Koberger to purchase a K-bar knife sheath, a K-bar sharpener, and a bottle of supplements. So again, here we go with, they know for sure Koberger bought those items. So they're just going to say that Koberger bought the knife, he bought the sharpener, and he bought the supplements. And so they went and replicated the same process and bought those items, some items, themselves. I photographed each of the packages. So listen to this. Gilbertson from ISP provided me with 3 packages he obtained by ordering them from Amazon. I take that to mean the detective ordered items from Amazon to see how they arrive in packaging when you order those items from Amazon. I photographed each of the packages that this person ordered, I believe, and their contents along with the order paperwork. Detective Gilbertson's provided. So this is the items that the detective bought. What did he buy? The package contained a K-bar knife, straight fighting knife, with a leather USMC sheath, a K-bar sharpener, and a bottle of vegan supplement. I attached all the photos to this case and booked all of the items into evidence. So the reason why it gets me a little freaked out is you literally have an officer buying the items that they find in his car, or that some of the items they found in the car, like the bottle of supplements. You also see an officer buying the actual weapon that they say was used in the commission of the crime. Now, granted, the timing, if it's all well documented and it was bought after the murders, we're not suggesting the officer bought the weapon that was literally used in the crime. But then you wonder, if the weapon shows up somewhere, did the police buy the weapon that shows up somewhere? Now, again, you would think that any internet sleuth could figure out, well, yeah, you bought the knife and now all of a sudden you find the knife. They haven't even found the knife, so that's not where they went. But my mind started going there. Like, you're literally going to buy the knife that is missing. Is that going to show up someday? Now, they bought the knife, I think, because they wanted to be able to look at the knife, examine the knife. They also wanted to make sure how it got delivered, to see if it gave us any tips on how it would have been delivered, and then look, these things, when they come, always come in this kind of packaging. Did we find any of that kind of packaging? So they might be using it for ways that you don't even imagine. Just kind of like they're trying to replicate Kohberger's actions. But again, when you buy the same knife that was used in the crime, if you were unscrupulous, like the movie, oh my God, I can't remember what it was. There's a movie about cops that frame somebody in a murder. Has Anthony Hopkins in it. Anyways, same kind of thing. They basically get a weapon that's exactly like the weapon used in the commission, and then basically try to pull it off as, this is the weapon we couldn't find. That happened in a movie. Really good movie. Can't remember what it was. It wasn't Double Jeopardy. Anyways, point being is that worth watching if you can figure out what the hell movie I'm talking about. Danny Vargas, 6/28/2023. Meeting with Spokane County medical examiners. Now this gets interesting because this is going to start talking about wounds on the bodies and very specific patterns on the bodies. It's some new stuff. It's not autopsy stuff directly, I don't think. I've heard some people talking about autopsy stuff. Maybe this is the one they're talking about. So we're going to spend a little time with this. And it's a little graphic, so spoiler alert, if you, warning alert, if you're triggered by violence, this is going to be a little violent at describing the wounds on bodies. Okay. On June 7th, 2023, I reached out to Dr. So-and-so, Chief Medical Examiner for the Spokane County Medical Examiner Office. So again, these bodies of the victims were shipped up to Spokane for their autopsy. So they're now going up and having a meeting with the Spokane County Medical Examiner's Office to arrange a meeting with the Latah County Prosecutor's team. So this is going to be with Bill Thompson's team and so on. The prosecution wants to go take a look at things by the medical examiner who did the autopsy, right? So on June 27, 2023, I met with a certain individual, MPD, Moscow Police Department evidence technician. That's who that was that they met with, but they redacted the name, and had item number such and such, K-bar knife, temporary release to me so that I could bring it to the meeting. So I think this is the K-bar knife. So just to be clear, a K-bar knife is in evidence of some kind, and I had it released to me. It's not the K-bar knife in the commission of the crime, I believe. They've maintained they have never found the knife. They never found the bloody clothes. It's the K-bar knife that a detective had bought. So they're releasing that. It's being held, if you will, in evidence. That worries me too. It worries me because a K-bar knife you have in evidence locked up somewhere would suggest that it's part of the crime, but you bought that knife. But anyways, they're not going there. I'm getting ahead of myself. It never happened. So it's probably, I'm twitching. I'm twitching because I'm like, where the fuck's that leading? Why do you have a K-bar knife that you bought in evidence? Anyways, so the K-bar knife's been temporarily released to me so I could bring it to the meeting with Dr. So-and-so. I locked item such and such into a temporary lockbox. So not only are they keeping this knife that they bought for demonstration purposes and understanding, but they're keeping it in evidence and they're keeping it locked up and they got chain of custody on it, which again worries the fuck out of me if they were ever going to attempt to try to say that they found the knife. Why is it being treated like it's evidence? Maybe that's standard police procedure, to be fair. I don't work in police departments, so I don't know. Maybe that's standard fare, but it seemed a little bit bothersome that they're treating this knife like it somehow needs to be locked up at all times and chain of custody on it when, anyways, they bought that knife. All right, on June 28, 2023 at approximately 10:30, myself, along with Bill Thompson, Ashley Jennings, Jeff Nye, and Ingrid Beatty, with the doctor at the Spokane County Medical Examiner's Office, Dr. So-and-so had pre-selected several photos from each victim to go over with us so that she could describe the shape of the weapon which would have caused the injuries. I removed the K-bar knife from the sealed package, this evidence package, and showed it to the doctor. The doctor then stated that the shape and size of the K-bar knife was consistent as being the weapon which could have caused the injuries on all 4 of the victims. Doctor then described how some of the wounds had 2 points on either end, and how some wounds had a point on one end and a square shape on the other end. Now, I think I know what they're explaining, and it's very weird when you're looking at it, but if a knife comes to a sharp edge, right, a little point right there, and then kind of widens out, and there's that top that's flat, that end, for example, might create a squared off 2 indentation. If stabbed into something, it might leave a couple of a flat edge and 2 indentations where the 2 points are. Whereas at the bottom, where the knife is just down to a narrow kind of razor's edge, that would be 1 cutting point. So what I think they're trying to say is the bodies show evidence of a weapon that has stab wounds, that has a sharp point at one end and a squared off 2-point entry at the other end, meaning it's a knife that widens out the top. That's the way I'm interpreting it. All right. So the doctor explained how the K-bar knife would have created these wounds, depending on the depth of the injury. So again, the further you go in the body, the more that knife might widen out towards the hilt where you're holding onto it, right? At the very, very tip, it's very narrow. As it goes further down towards the hilt, that blade widens out going to the hilt, and so therefore the depth of the injury can be determined in part by how much that flattened out part. Did I just become a forensics guy? Like, anyways, I'm understanding, I think, how this works. And I think a lot of you did as well, but for those who aren't following along, like, what the fuck is the 2 points? What? This is what I'm thinking is happening. All right. So she would describe it how a deeper wound would show a point on one side, that would be where the blade edge is, and a square on the other side. Again, the flat part where the blade had widened off. So the deeper it goes in, you're going to have a 1 point down here sharp, and then the 2 points flat up on where the blade went deep. And how it maps the shape of the knife blade, having the single sharp edge on one side and a square edge on the other below the tip. The doctor pointed out some of the wounds had a mark that was consistent with the guard of the K-bar knife. So again, on the hilt is a guard that keeps your hand from slipping and cutting yourself on the knife because you went past the guard. It's designed to keep you from, like when you're stabbing something and you don't want your hand to slip, let's say it's covered in blood, and you don't want your hand to slip past that guard and cut yourself on the very knife, you have a guard. There's indications on the body that the knife went so deep that the guard hit the body, and you can see the indentations or the marks of the guard on the body. Again, this is very, very graphic, and I would normally say that YouTube would have a problem with graphic violence, but this is for forensics analysis. We're trying to understand how they came to the conclusion it was a K-bar knife and not, say, a hatchet or some other item. So the way that we know it was a knife and not a hatchet would be if we believe that the body showed indications of the guard of that knife hitting the body at places. So a hatchet wouldn't leave a guard. So that's kind of all things that would go into the how do we know it wasn't a hatchet or a machete. Now, machete does have a guard as well, but well, some do. I know some machetes that do not have a guard. Actually, I think I can pick in my mind all I can picture is machetes that don't have a guard. So maybe machetes don't have a guard. Maybe no. Swords have a guard. Anyways, I'm on a side tangent. All right. So the doctor described how the wounds would look different depending on the skin stretching, the dynamics of the situation at the time, the angle or position of the knife was in when it was inserted and or removed, and how a victim was moving or not moving at the time. So again, not to get super, super graphic, but if you stab somebody and they twist and turn, that might cause a rip, a stretch, a tear in the skin, and a really good forensics person probably can understand, oh, they were probably stabbed in the left side from behind, and they rotated the body away. This would cause this tearing, twisting motion. Really cool, interesting stuff, a little morbid, a little graphic. But we in America probably will never see the autopsy photos. We will probably never get to see that and analyze it ourselves. And again, some of you are thinking, why would you sick mother effer? Frankly, I don't want to see graphic, horrific bodies that are cut up. Having said that, my job is to understand what happened, and I would probably have to do so. So if you think I'm doing it for some kind of sick jollies because I want to see mutilated bodies, no, sir. It's not that. It's because I would have to get past my stomach revulsion and go, okay, what do I see here? Like anybody who works in the field would have to do. So the doctor described some injuries depicted that the strength of the weapon itself, that depicted the strength of the weapon itself and the force used would have been great. So it's somebody who's strong. Again, that doesn't mean necessarily male, you sexist, misogynist bastards. Because again, females can be super strong. There are women who are pretty tall and pretty muscular and pretty athletic who can put some stank on that thing. So it could have been a woman. So don't think that just because some strength was put behind it or some force, that means it was a man. I did the whole sexist, misogynist bastard thing because I get called that from time to time. I don't get it. Like I'm the last. Anyways, I'm on a side tangent. We concluded out the meeting with the doctor. I brought the item back and booked it into evidence. It again disturbs me that the knife that they purchased is being booked in and out of evidence. It bothers me on a fundamental level that's how you make a mistake later on when you're like, oh, this was in Koberger's evidence, the K-bar knife. How did we overlook it the whole time? It's been here in the evidence bag the entire time. All right, Andrew Fox, 7/5/2023. On June 15th, 2023, I was provided the entirety of the 1112 King Road surveillance videos, not 1122, which is the murder scene, but 1112 King Road surveillance video. This included 1,464-minute videos that arranged from little after midnight on the 13th to 1722, so like a whole bunch of hours, to 17 hours, right? And using the Axon Investigate version 3.1 software, I think that's police department kind of software they're using to investigate it, I was able to concatenate, that's a big word for you, meaning to stitch, but they even have it in parentheses, to concatenate or to stitch things together. There you go. There's your education on the word concatenate, to stitch things together. The videos together for multiple hour clips. As a result, I was able to compile the videos down to 17. Now, was that 17 hours or 17 videos? Anyways, the videos were placed on a portable hard drive and entered into evidence. Okay, I just thought it was interesting. Educational benefit for concatenate. If you didn't know that word already. It's a big one, but you know, I've done it for a long time because I've done video editing and audio editing, and concatenation is the thing. All right, Tyson Barrett, 7/13/2023. On 11/19/2022, so this is a week after the murders, I emailed some individual at the University of Idaho Office of General Counsel requesting a list of vehicles with parking permits on campus or had been ticketed between August 1st, again, August 1st, because that's when they believed Brian Koberger arrived. We now realize from a whole bunch of documents that Brian Koberger, his first appearance in town seems to be June 23rd, whether that was just a pre-visit, buying a place, renting a place, and then leaving in, not clear to me yet. All right, so they were looking for the period of August 1st through. Now, it also could be because the school year started August 1st, or the semester at U of I started August 1st, so maybe they're only looking for parking permits. That also could be an explanation. Anyway, the request was, I side tangent a lot. The request was made to assist investigators locating persons who owned vehicles of interest in the ongoing homicide investigation. On 12/8/22, I received an email from so-and-so that contained a spreadsheet showing U of I records for parking passes and parking tickets for any white Elantras dating back to 2017. Why are they looking so far back to 2017? But anyways, on December 2nd, 2022, this is a month after the murders, right, or almost, I received an email from this person responding to a request form from the FBI. So again, the FBI has been involved in this case from the very, very beginning. The FBI gave the tip about Brian Koberger on December 19th. The FBI is involved here on December 2nd, well before the tip came in from the FBI. The FBI was co-located with Moscow Police Department from the beginning, helping them develop who the killer was. List A was a list of all classes back to the initial enrollment under dual credit enrollment in the school, names, classes, locations, and instructors. List B was specific information for each class, and list 3 was class rosters for each class. The term, the class description, student names, ID numbers, student email names, etc., and final grades. I don't know why they need all that information. I don't even have it figured out. But anyways, on February 2nd, 2022, I received an email from that same person responding to a request from the FBI that contained data related to card swipe doors on the U of I campus. The information was forwarded to investigation. So again, I'm not sure where they're looking at it. Do they suspect, and there's a reason to believe I suspect that at some point it looks like they might be looking into a professor because they want to talk. There's a point. Hear me out, and I could be completely wrong, but I'm gonna tell. This is a guess, and it could be completely wrong. There's lots of explanations for this. There was a point when they were asking about Kaylee Gonzalez, and they were looking into somebody that was redacted, and they wanted to know how much money that person made. And I said at the time, back in those videos, why the fuck do they care how much money a guy that Kaylee knows makes? There's a lot of focus on Kaylee Gonzalez and the multiple bank accounts that she had and the multiple money she had and the expensive car that she just got. Where was Kaylee making her money? Where did she get all her money? So it seems to me that law enforcement has targeted Kaylee as a major player in this thing, and they want to know about her money, the people that she dated, and looking into a specific person, one person's financial records and how much money they make. What we'll see again as we get into this document is that at some point, they want to know how much money professors make. How much money do the teachers make? They want to see the salary scale. Were they, and it's a conjecture, were they looking into the possibility that Kaylee was having some kind of relationship with a professor at the school, and they wanted to verify that this guy makes the same money as a professor would make? I don't know. That's a complete guess. But they're also now looking for card swipes on the U of I campus. Why? If, for example, and this is again 100% going down a fucking rabbit hole that might have nothing to do with the killing. If they had thought that Kaylee was dating a professor and that maybe they could have been a potential suspect, were they looking for when that professor came and went from the school? And so they're looking at card swipe data. Students, I don't know, would have card swipe data. The buildings that the students need to go into and the classes generally will be open for students to just walk right in. You don't prox in unless they've changed security. Now maybe they've changed security and universities are now all locked down. Every student has to have a pass to walk into a door. I don't think that's the case. So it looks to me what they're looking for is they're looking for faculty and they're looking for card swipe data to find when people were coming and going from the buildings of U of I. Why? Why is that important? I have to start making guesses. I'm probably completely wrong. One of you is probably going to make me look like an idiot that I just ranted for 10 minutes about the possibility that there could be a professor that was on their radar, and you're like, no, idiot. It was because Kaylee worked at the University of Idaho and had after-hours access and had a swipe card. I don't know. On 12/6/22, I received an email from this person with the FBI who was requesting the U of I's pay schedule. That's what I told you. They're looking at the U of I's pay schedule. I contacted this person and he emailed me an explanation of the pay scale and I forwarded it. Why do they care what University of Idaho pays employees or staff members? Why do they care, in the case of Kaylee, how much money a particular person made that she had interactions with? Is the person of interest for them of some kind someone who works at U of I who had an interaction with Kaylee, perhaps inappropriate, and they were looking into it? I'm just asking questions. Dustin Blaker, 4/21/2023. Collection of plates related to Hyundai Elantras. So from November 25th, this is after the murders, not too long, to December 12th, I gathered information from other police agencies around Moscow in reference to any, listen to this, to any 2012 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. What bothers me a little about this was the idea that they were looking for a 2013 to 2000 or 2012 to 13 Hyundai Elantra or a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra initially, and then later when they found out Brian Koberger had a vehicle that was outside that range, they expanded the range. Their story is no, we expanded the range immediately. As soon as they sent that email saying, I want to look for, I think this vehicle's a 2011 to 13, then there was an email that immediately came out after that and said, you know what, on further reflection, I think it's more like let's include up to 16. Yet multiple documents show they keep looking for 2012 to 13 or 11 through 13, not up into the 15s and 16s where Koberger's car will be identified. So I just find it interesting, and I don't know if I buy the story that they immediately corrected their thing, and it was really they were never really looking for just a 2011-13 horseshit, because a lot of their documents are looking for just 2011 or 2013, and that's outside the range of Koberger's vehicle. So later when they find out Brian Koberger is a suspect, that range was expanded. At least that's the way it looks to a person who says, I'm not sure you're playing fair here. Anyways, Lowry on 7/25/2023, Koberger's PayPal OneDrive account. I feel like there's got to be something I highlighted down here further, and there's not. What do I? Oh, I think I was just going to mention. Yeah, I was going to side tangent about OneDrive. All right. I'll be brief. I would say don't trust Microsoft with your privacy, because again, a lot of stuff in OneDrive is supposed to be highly encrypted. When you use the cloud, it's highly encrypted. There's hashtags put on your stuff and scrambled, and it's not supposed to be something that anybody can get, including law enforcement, because they would have to have a warrant to get that information. It appeared to me at times that Microsoft will just hand over that information if law enforcement asks, with or without a warrant. But that's a side tangent, and I've always felt that. Apple, however, does not tend to play side tangent, and I can't even explain all the details. Apple, however, does not seem to just give law enforcement whatever they ask for. But a lot of companies, like a Microsoft, like a Google, if law enforcement simply asks, hey, we're suspicious of somebody in America, can you give us all their private data? Sure, absolutely. You're law enforcement. You're the good guys. Have all their personal data. So be careful who you do business with. And again, I realize you have nothing to hide in America. You have nothing to hide. So let them look all they want. I got nothing to hide. Shit, I'm so sorry for you that you have such an uninteresting life. Anyways, James Fry, 7/25/2023. Some individual, now this is interesting. This is, I think this is a tip, a follow-up on a tip. Is this a tip? Maybe not. Let's see. So-and-so redacted to hell. Is it a first, middle, last initial, KJS with last name? So it's a person, and I think it's a female, came into the police department to speak with me. S, I think it's the last name of this female, was hesitant to talk due to being acquaintances with, and then it was AB, which is a person who's AB. So she's hesitant to talk because she's acquaintances with AB. She told me that she did not believe that B, I think this is the AB person, she does not believe that AB or B was involved with the homicide, but stated that he, so AB is a male. So we got a female talking about how she's nervous about her relationship with a male that goes by AB. She did not believe that this male was involved in the homicide, but she stated he always had a large sheath knife on him. She said that male had interest in her daughter and made her uncomfortable at times. This person told me, this female told me that she believed he had been in the Marines for several years and just wanted the information passed on. So it sounds to me like a mother is concerned about a guy who has been in the military, carries around a big knife all the time, and is interested in her daughter. And she doesn't think he's involved in the homicides, but she thinks they should pay attention because maybe she's wrong. That's what I get of the gist of that. And I find that interesting. Who's AB? Do you guys know? Let me know in the comments, if you will. Dustin Blaker from 7/26/2023. During the course of this investigation, I had DS, manager for some company, reach out to me and ask if we wanted information about his past tenants and information of anyone who might own a Hyundai Elantra for the properties that he manages. I told this person I would accept any information he was legally and willing to provide to us. Again, keep in mind, this kind of information may require a warrant from the police. So he's basically saying, look, and this, you need to understand how things work a little bit in American privacy rights, right? So it may be that the tenant, the person who owns these properties himself, by law, is not supposed to give out private information to somebody, even law enforcement, without a warrant. So he's like, he comes willingly to the police. Hey, I don't give a shit about privacy in this country. I don't care if I'm not supposed to give this information. Would you like everything I know about everybody who rents my places? And the law officer says, we'll take anything that you are legally and willing to provide to us. So again, it's on him if he wants to break the law. But this is the way things work in America. Most people in America trust the police. They think the police are the good guys. And to be honest with you, the police probably a lot of times if not most of the times, are the good guys. So I get it. But here's the thing. People will bend over backwards to help the police and violate your civil liberties. Police will sometimes allow them to do so. If you want to give it to us, we can't ask. It's illegal to ask. It's technically illegal for you to give. But if you give it to me, that's on you. That's your mistake, kind of thing. That's how it goes. It's also my question about that maintenance worker on Showalter's place. Did law enforcement have a search warrant to go into Showalter's place? No. Could a maintenance worker who has to work on buildings go in and take a peek for them? Sure. Would it be a gray area? Fuck yeah. But it happens probably all the time. All right. So there you go. Side tangent over on that. I got a lot of side tangents today. Mallory from 8/1/2023. On July 25, 2023, I applied for a warrant for user data from June 1st, 2022 to present associated with Spotify accounts. So this is well before the murders. Again, Brian Kohberger, they believe now came out, I'm finding out, is June 23rd, not August 1st. So now they're looking for Spotify information. Spotify is a music app. I'm thinking to myself, at first I was like, what does Spotify have to do with anything? It's not really a social media account. Well, in a way, yes, people can follow other people on Spotify. They can watch the playlists that other people have. They can share playlists with each other. They can comment on songs. So it does have a social media in part of it. So they're looking for a bunch of redacted people's names that we're not supposed to know about and looking at their Spotify accounts. Chances are good it's not Kohberger at this point, but maybe it is. Maybe it is, actually. Maybe. June 1st, though, was before he even arrived. But anyways, based on the information obtained from Washington State University, Brian Kohberger moved to Pullman, they're repeating it again, on June 23rd. I don't know if he moved to Pullman on June 23rd or if he simply came out and secured a residence, and that's what they called moving to Pullman. I don't know. I requested both historical records and real-time provisional records in order to determine if Kohberger had any interactions with the victims leading up to November 13th on Spotify. So, did Kohberger find a playlist of Maddie because he was obsessed with her and he loved her fucking music, and he was going to be like, I'm going to steal your playlist, bitch. Okay, that was completely dumb and a rant. But the point being is, like, what does Spotify have to do with murders? It's a stretch to me. Having said that, they're looking for any connection, and at the end of the day, this is what they said. We really, really, really wanted to make a connection between Brian Kohberger and any of the victims, and we couldn't do so. So they were even going to Spotify trying to find that connection. It just fucking doesn't exist. Brett Payne, August 2nd, 2023. And this is about an event on August 2nd, 2023. On Wednesday, August 2nd, 2023, I responded to several locations. This is super interesting to me. I responded to several locations around the Palouse in order to collect soil samples. These areas were identified as points of interest for soil collection from pictures and cellular data recovered from Kohberger's phone. So Kohberger's phone, they're going through his phone in evidence, and they're looking at the pictures he's taken. He's taking pictures of places that have dirt, okay? And so they see a plastic shovel. I think maybe Kohberger's into making sandcastles. He's like a little kid again. He's like, hey, I'm going to go down with the shovel. He's got a plastic shovel in the trunk. Okay, I'm being sarcastic, but the point being there was a plastic shovel with dirt wedged into several locations, I think on the shovel is what they're saying. And it was recovered during the search of Kohberger's white Elantra. And these samples were taken in order to compare them to the samples on the shovel. Where does this mean? What is it? What's happening here? A plastic shovel, is that a kid's shovel? A plastic shovel is found in his trunk. They're believing, here's where their mind's going, Brian Kohberger buried the K-bar knife after the murders, and he used this little plastic shovel to dig a hole and bury that knife somewhere where he can come and retrieve it later, or whatever the case may be. So now they're looking at photos of places that he's been that have dirt, and you're like, oh, what if he went out into the woods here and used that little plastic shovel to dig up this area and bury the K-bar knife? So now they're going to go to locations and get soil samples from those locations and compare them to the soil that's caught in the blades and crevices or whatever of that plastic shovel, is what I'm gathering. And the locations include Kamiak Butte, which is probably a hiking location, Colfax Park, probably a place where people hang out, Clemgard Park, Wawawe Park, where Brian admitted he had been many times stargazing that night. He said he was at Wawawe Park East and West, and Johnson Staley Road. So they're looking for all these places where he's got pictures where he's been before. So he has been to Wawawe Park, by the way, not just completely fabricated. He's been there. Whether he was there that night or not, that's the $1 million question. Each sample was placed into a clean container covered with paper filter and then later sealed with evidence tape. I placed all the items or samples into the original hard case with a list of the above location information and sample numbers and sealed the case with evidence tape. I later booked the hard case into MPD evidence for it to be shipped to the FBI for analysis. It should be noted, all of the samples except number 6, which is from Johnson Road, Staley Road, were collected from public property. I obtained verbal permission from so-and-so, the owner of property number 6, I'm sure, where 6 was collected. So what I think it is they had to go into private property for number 6. Koberger had a picture from private property, apparently, and so they went and got permission. Everything else, all those things are public places. They went on private property for number 6. All right, we're getting close to ending video 1 of documents 201 to 250, and then we're going to probably finish. I think we're going to have no problem finishing up with one video to finish up documents 201 to 250. Danny Vargas, 8/3/2023. Koberger's jail phone calls. Jail phone calls. On August 3, 2023, so Koberger's in jail, I booked a DVD into MPD evidence, which contains my working Word document labeled Brian phone calls. Now, let me say right now, working documents are a sticky wicket, as they say, right? Because a working document, what that means is we're constantly revising this document. It is what led to problems and the probable cause affidavit, the PCA, that was led to Brian Koberger's arrest, such as, for example, the PCA saying, we observed that the vehicle circling the house had no front license plate. Therefore, we believe that Brian Koberger is our suspect because he doesn't have a front license plate. That was in the PCA that a judge saw those two pieces of information. Brian Koberger is our suspect. He doesn't have a front license plate. The vehicle was observed not having a front license plate. Is that a good enough thing, Judge, for us to go get a warrant and make an arrest? Yes. Problem was, it was a working document, and detectives admitted that he was not observed not having a license plate. That was later discovered after they figured out who Brian Koberger was, and then wrote into the working document that was constantly being revised that the car didn't have a plate on it, and then that was falsely misleading to a magistrate to say, hey, we observed the car without a license plate. Yes, I talk about it a lot because it's horseshit. And when the prosecution was pressed about the inaccuracies in the PCA, the probable cause affidavit, their response was, you know what? We don't even intend to use the PCA in trial. We didn't. Why? Because it's horseshit. You wouldn't have got the search warrant in the first place without lying about what you had. And so they're like, you know what? We don't even intend to use the PCA at trial. We're just going to ignore that part. Well, you've also got his DNA on the knife sheet. You know what? We're not going to really use the DNA. We've got him other ways. That's what happened in this case. The two primary things that puts Koberger there, the PCA saying things that weren't true and getting the arrest in the first place, and the DNA saying he was there, they both didn't intend to use in trial. Yeah, we're not going to really use that in trial. Don't worry about it. Why the fuck wouldn't you use the very things that led you to arrest him in the first place? Because you can't, because they were sketchy, and you don't want to, and I think we didn't want a trial at all, because you didn't want that coming out in trial, that there was no reason for the arrest in the first place. Maybe they had a reason beyond that, but it makes me question things. All right, so he's talking about this working document that are phone calls with Brian. We're going to end here, I can tell. All right, so from the time that he was in custody in Latah County Jail to present, the transcripts of the conversations are not verbatim. The calls highlighted in red are not complete. The calls highlighted in green were listened to by a certain person with ISP, Idaho State Police. There is no presumption of privacy when you're on a jail phone, by the way, unless you're talking to your attorney and unless your name is Luigi Mangione. And the reason I'm bringing that up is if you watch both cases, you will know that the district attorney and multiple law enforcement prosecutors listened in illegally to Luigi Mangione and his attorney's private attorney-client privilege phone calls, which they're not allowed to listen to. So when you're on a jail phone, it's assumed everyone can listen, and they do listen. But when you're talking to your attorney, that's supposed to be attorney-client privilege, and they're not supposed to listen. They did it to Luigi. I just wanted to side tangent on that. And it's a violation of his constitutional rights. But a lot of you are like, I don't really care. I got nothing to hide. Who cares? If I have a private conversation with my attorney, it doesn't matter. I got nothing to hide. My head's going to explode. All right. The calls highlighted in green were listened to by such and such and detailed in a file labeled Koberger calls. I will update the document when I listen to the calls highlighted in red or future calls. So I would love to hear those calls. I would love to hear those calls. A lot of us would love to hear those calls. We're about halfway through this document dive, and we're at about an hour. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here, get this video in the can, get it uploaded, and then I'm going to go and finish out this. I think we're going to finish those other documents. If I recall, the biggest document in there was about the wounds. We already talked about that. So everything else should go pretty smooth sailing and hopefully won't be terribly boring. Thank you all who tell me that you appreciate my deep dives and that my little side rants that sometimes aren't super little are what makes this interesting. Because some of you are like, these documents are effing dry. You at least make it a little entertaining with your style. So some of you don't appreciate that style. You're not even here listening to that. Those who do appreciate that style, thank you very much for supporting the channel and telling me how much you appreciate my little rants.